Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Tinner. I am the current president of the Hudson Valley Passive House Alliance, and I'm a certified passive house consultant and also a HERS rater. I work for a company called Sustainable Comfort, and our work is mainly multifamily in the affordable sector. We do verification of programs like Energy Star, LEED, Enterprise Green Communities, and PHA-HV Passive House. And we currently have 96 units certified under the PHA standard and roughly 350 units committed to PHA in our pipeline. So that might sound like a lot, but just to give you a little perspective, out of the 6,000 units that we have currently in our active projects, that's about 6% of our total work. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing my boss and the Vice President of Sustainable Comfort, James Moriaty. And the reason I chose to talk to him and not one particular developer or builder is that he's been working with our teams for over 10 years now and can share a variety of perspectives and experiences kind of on their behalf. So now I'll invite Jim to introduce himself and give you a bit more background on sustainable comfort.
Great, thanks, Michelle. For myself, really got my background in engineering, so civil engineering by training, and really got interested in sustainability and trying to make a difference in climate and sustainability, and found affordable housing and multifamily housing as a way to do that. So I've been consulting with developers and builders and architects for 10 years, like you said, and we actually started as a subsidiary of an HVAC contractor. So we have the mentality of a builder, of an HVAC sub, of needing to make sure this stuff works. So we try to take that mentality into each project and to really try to simplify and make something that is buildable, that will function for a really long time.
Thank you. Yeah, so just kind of a lead in to why we're both here. Dennis told me that the reason he asked me to participate on this panel is because at a recent AIA meeting, the question about whether or not to certify formally came up, and I sort of vehemently defended the certification path. And I thought I'd start off with explaining my perspective there. And I think, so for me, I think there is strength in numbers, and the more units that we certify to the PHA standard, the more value gets added to that brand name. And then I think there's also something to be said about consistency and having a common language. And when we say passive house, you know, we want to make sure that we all are in full agreement on what that means. So while I'm sure that many designers and professionals that are, you know, kind of designing to passive house but not fully certifying are doing a great job, it does still run the risk of folks omitting certain requirements because, you know, some things are hard, right? And maybe they're more expensive. And then that is going to result in a reduced level of diligence. And same with not having that third-party verification that PHA provides. So every project that gets certified through PHA gets submitted to them for review, and not having that, I'm sure, you know, can ultimately then have an impact on quality. So that being said, in recent years, we've seen a tremendous growth in projects pursuing net zero, but also passive house. And I want to ask James what he thinks the driving factor behind that is and why it's happening now.
Yeah, I think the first big one is policy and getting to the goals we need to get to, particularly around, you know, climate change and hitting the emissions reductions targets. New York has set really aggressive targets with the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. That means we not only need to clean up the grid, but we need to get off fossil fuels in buildings. We need to do it in our existing building stock and with new construction. So we need to get away from fossil fuels to heat pumps and do it efficiently. Programs like Passive House, where you bring in extra air tightness, extra insulation, and you really reduce your loads and your efficiency, that's critical to also combine with these electric-based systems to make sure you're not overburdening the grid, that you can have comfortable spaces and kind of heat that load in a different way. So policy, particularly, we work on a lot of affordable housing projects that that require and mandate some of these programs and pointing to these standards. Things like the gas moratoriums. Whole Westchester County is saying you can't connect to gas for new projects, and that's really driving adoption. Another one is incentives. So NYSERDA really aggressively targeting some of these programs and saying, we'll give you extra money. And we're seeing that NYSERDA can bring upwards to a 5% extra incentives to projects with the clean heat pump incentives, with their NYSERDA net zero incentives. We can have teams say it costs 4 or 5% more to build, but then have that be covered by incentives. And also just from the developer side and from a tenant side, having better buildings, more comfortable spaces, less noise if you're building near train tracks, and kind of having that verified performance and durability and resiliency that's really going to be needed kind of as we move forward in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you're making a lot of great points, and I think that all of the different aspects that are driving this kind of, you know, come together, and there's a lot of different you know, ever-changing programs that we as the consultant, really it's our role to tie them together and to optimize them for the client's specific needs so that we can help them, you know, achieve their goals, but also to kind of stack things in a way that they can achieve the most efficient building, which is, you know, what we're passionate about. So we're gonna just kind of pick on one project, our certified passive house project, and I want to talk about, you know, what some of the sticking points or ha-ha moments are, since this is a team that had not done passive house performance or anything close to it prior. So yeah, go ahead, James.
Yeah, so just some brief stories on a project in the Finger Lakes that had 12 buildings that are certified Passive House 2015. This developer has done LEED, has done Energy Star, and decided to go for Passive House for many of the reasons we talked about, for affordable housing, for being leaders in the climate reduction. And, you know, getting there was not the easiest thing in the world. In particular, air tightness and insulation is a big factor of Passive House, and making sure you're designing an envelope that has an air barrier and make sure that it works. And one item that they really ran into and we had to work through with them was that not all products are created equal. So the concept of a fluid applied air barrier was in the project, and when we got into reality, we tested and there was cracking occurring at all of the joints and all of the connections. We only identified that because we were required to test it. You know, Passive House says you have to test it. And then midway through construction, we were, you know, running this air tightness testing, and we were able to identify faults with the materials. And then my favorite photo on the project, the one on the right, where they tested out every product they could to see what worked. And that kind of learning is really critical on these types of projects. And it was able to be worked through collaboratively with the team. So on the left was kind of the state of the building when we tested it. They had windows and the air barrier in, and the test came in around 1,000, and we needed to be at 700. The standard concept of, well, spray foam the building and you'll get your air tightness, they tried it, and we actually found that it didn't reduce the air leakage as much as they needed. It got to around 850. And that's because the spray foam is not a catch-all. It's not sealing all the gaps that you need to. And what we went to was a different product on the right that really got the seam sealed, that connected to the windows, and then achieved our air tightness that way. And so we were able to not have to use spray foam on this project, despite the photo in the middle. And so kind of the critical nature of that was that, you know, we had to go out and test it and really work through those details. That the most air sealing happened when we were out there really identifying what needed to be sealed. Having gone through all that trouble, would they do it again? Well, the answer is yes and more. So on phase one, they met and achieved Passive House. They have the insulation factors they needed. They had the air tightness. They figured it out. They know the concepts. They did it 12 times. They now have a phase two where they're going to do it 12 more times. And so they actually decided to take it even further. And the reason was because they figured out the concept. Now they wanted to actually, you know, drive down their costs even more. So they went full net zero. They included solar on the roof to really produce the energy that they needed, and it changed the goal a little bit. They now then had to use the same amount of energy as they're producing, and ended up going with a geothermal system. And so to kind of compare this developer's evolution and their story, the project on the first row was a LEED Energy Star building with gas systems, and that was what they were used to building. Creekview Phase 1, we were able to get in and get them to Passive House with certain decisions like electric resistance water heating or others that still used a fair bit of cost. And then when we got to Creekview 2, which is in design now, we took that concept even further to get to Passive House and net zero. And the big reductions are the energy use of the building goes down, and then with the inclusion of solar energy, really gets those cost savings to really come down, as well as the energy use. So we certainly want to thank that team for a lot of the lessons learned that we've been able to kind of take to other projects throughout the state.
Yeah, and I just have to say it's really inspiring to see that progression happening and that kind of growth for the developer, and the more stories like that we have and that we can share, I think the faster adoption will also be. And that makes it exciting for us. You touched on it. I mean, it's not just about the projects for us that are going Passive House. Like I mentioned, it's sort of a smaller fraction of our total workload, but it influences all of the other work that we do, because now the more experience we have with these air barrier challenges, with more innovative mechanical systems, with electrification, the better we're able to guide other teams towards those similar goals as well. So Jim, I don't know if you'd like to touch on that as we kind of wrap it up here.
Yeah, no, I think certainly the learning we've taken all projects. Things like energy code require you to have air barriers, require you connect them to everywhere, and that they be installed per manufacturer's recommendations. Having the ability to look at details and know that they're able to meet Passive House can then be brought to other projects. And certainly that's something we're able to do. And as verifiers working on a number of different projects, being able to share that knowledge across different parts of the state, different parts of the industry. So we definitely would thank the projects that came before us. We didn't invent any of those systems uniquely. We're pulling them from other projects, which is why we're more than happy to share our experiences with others and kind of what we're seeing be successful.
Great. Well, thank you for agreeing to be interviewed. And yeah, I think that's a wrap.
Yeah, thanks for having me.